Hi, I'm Julie from the Spellbound Bead Company, and today I'm going to be making one of these lovely necklaces covered in little violet beads. Now the little violet beads are made of lucite and it's got a pearlized finish to it, so you get a mixture of shades within each bead. I'm going to be making the one with the darker flowers, and I'm also going to be making a very quick, simple and absolutely delightful pair of earrings to match. I've got together the materials I need to make a necklace and earring set. Now, the original version contains these lovely lemon coloured violet flowers. This time I'm going to swap in some of this lovely purpley turquoisey mix. Now, as you can see, each flower is slightly shaded. They've got a pearlescent finish and the colours vary ever so slightly, and that's what adds to the wonderful texture you get through the necklace. Now I'm going to need 5 of one colour, 3 of a second and 3 of a third, and I've got 1 extra bead because that's going to be the clasp at the back. That will make the necklace. For the earrings I'm going to need 2 each of 2 shades. Now the earrings also contain a leaf, so we've got 2 leaves over there put aside for the earrings. I've got 10 of those for the necklace, and you can see they've got a top hole which allows me to dangle the leaf from the main string. Now, to add a little bit more colour and texture, I'm going to add in these little velvet finish lime beads. That's these ones here. I've got 16 of those, and I've got 16 of these lovely opal pink crystal rondelles. These are 6x4mm and they're an opal pink. I'm going to need some seed beads to do the spacing, and I've got size 8 opaque olive. I've got a lovely pearlescent pink in a size 10 that works well with these beads, and I've got a lemon in the same finish that I'll use for the centre of some of the flowers and a little bit along the string as well, because that helps to bring a little extra bit of colour into the design. Now, if you want to make earrings as well, you'll need some head pins, some ear fittings and a selection of jump rings. I've got 6mm and 4mm jump rings. I'm going to clear the deck and lay out the design, and I'll be back to you when it's all tidy and ready to go. So I've laid out the principal beads for the centre front of my design. That's the flowers, the leaves and the velvet beads along with the crystal beads that will go in between. Now I'm just concentrating on this portion of the pattern to start with. Begins with a velvet bead and finishes with a velvet bead, which I've got here and here. And just to the side I've got the remaining beads that will work out towards the centre back. I'm not worried about those at the moment. I'm going to build the centre front first. Now I laid out the flowers to start with, and I want the bluey one to be in the middle, so I've got a bluey one there and one at each end. I've put 1 each in the gap, and then I've filled in the remaining gaps with an assortment of the pink and the mauve. It's not symmetrical. It tends to work better if it's not absolutely symmetrical. So you can see there's a dark pink one there, darker pink there, pale pink, pale pink, pale pink, dark pink. Now in the gaps I'm going to be adding a leaf, a velvet bead and a crystal bead, and that's the same in every gap. Now every gap won't have exactly the same order, so sometimes you might put it going leaf, crystal, round, and in the next one you might go crystal leaf round. But if we line them up in the gaps, we know we've got our beads in the right place. I've moved my earring beads over to one side, so I know these are the ones I'm working with for my necklace. Now I'm going to be using needle and thread. I'm going to be using a double thread because the way we're going to put these leaves on a little thread loop demands an extra bit of strength. So we'll be using a double thread. We're going to start the thread here so that I can just do the centre front between the two green velvet beads. Now with the remaining thread I'll work out towards the centre back on one side and make half of the clasp. And then I'll start reinforcing, so I'll come back down that string of beads, back through the centre front up to the other velvet green bead, and then I can do the other side of the necklace. Now that means that everything will have 2 lots of thread going through it, so it'll be 4 strands, makes it really strong. Right, let's get threading. I'm going to start here with the velvet bead, and I've prepared my needle with 2 meters of double thread. That will allow me to go that way and back again, and the tails I leave here will also be able to reinforce that last bit of string. So I'm going to add on a keeper bead to stop everything dropping off at that point. It's a contrast bead, just a seed bead will do, and I'm going to put it on about 30 centimetres, perhaps 40 centimetres from the 2 cut ends of the thread. So I've just threaded it on. I'm going to make a single knot around the bead. There we go, it's a single knot, and that's attached. Now that won't move while I'm threading, but if I want to remove it later, which I will do, you just put your needle through and it comes off the end. So I'll put that on again. So I'm going to go between 30 and 40 centimetres from the end. It's always best to have a tiny bit more thread than you perhaps need, than half a centimetre too little. So there's our keeper bead reinstalled, and I'm going to copy the pattern we have here. So I'm going to start with a seed bead before this velvet bead. There's the velvet bead going on. Of course I managed to pick one without a hole, so there's the velvet bead going on and a pink, and then I've got 1, 2 of my spacer beads, you can see there. And then I'm going to add a leaf. So I'm going to run these down to the keeper bead. And we're going to add a leaf so it dangles from a seed bead. This is my seed bead. I'm going to put on one of the pink ones, and I'm going to pick up my leaf. And pass through the leaf. Bring everything down to the previous beads. Now I want to go back up the pink bead, so in the opposite direction. I need to pull the thread through again. So I need to tension the thread so that I've got a slip of thread at the front and the back of the leaf, and the leaf dangles directly down from the pink bead. And then I pass forwards through the previous green bead on the main string and pull through. And when I've done that, you can see that the little pink bead sits directly below that green bead on the main strand, and the pink bead makes a little sling for the green leaf. And that's going to be the way we connect all of our leaves. I'm just going to move the keeper bead up a bit just to keep everything tight. That means it's easier to follow the pattern. Right, so now we've got 2 green beads to go on. two of our spacer beads, and then we put on our first flower. So I'm going to go from the back of the flower to the front of the flower. And I need a little stopper bead in the centre of the flower. I'm going to use a little yellow one. So I'm going to make sure that the flower is up against the previous beads. I'm not yanking it so it's super tight. Just need it to be neat. Pass back through the flower to pull the little yellow bead up inside. And we're going to do the same at the back of the flower as we did at the top of the leaf. The previous green bead we're going to pass forwards through that. And there we have a little flower attached and a leaf attached. And you can see that that green bead has pulled up tightly against the back of the flower and is actually nestling slightly inside the hole, which makes it really neat. Right, so let's have a look at our pattern again. I've got two plain ones and then another velvet bead. So two plain ones, and this time the velvet bead dangles, so I need to put the velvet bead on and a stopper bead for the bottom, just the one. Pull everything down. And very similar to the flower, I'm going to go back through the velvet bead. That's just the end of the thread caught up. Make sure you pull up any loose loops of thread. So I've come back through the velvet bead. Now I'm going to go forward through the last green bead we put on the main string. There we go. And we've got to there on our pattern. Now you can see now it's a little bit more, so we've got 1, 2, 3 green beads before we add a crystal. So 1, 2, 3. Let's pick up our crystal. Now we could put a pink on the bottom or a yellow. I think I'm going to go for the yellow. So we go back through the pink bead. Just need to make sure I pull out that loop. You can see, just grab the right side and gently ease it through. And then forwards through the green bead on the main strand. So I've now got 2 here, and now we've got another leaf to add, and that's in 2 green beads time. So 2 green, oh, don't forget your pink one. So it's those 2 are for the main strand. The pink one is to dangle the leaf from, and the leaf bead. So I need to go back through the pink bead. So I'm going in the opposite direction through the pink bead. And this is where I need to look at the thread, make sure that the leaf is dangling nice and straight. We've got even straps. And then I go forwards through the green bead on the main string. And now we're going to put on a new flower, and that's 2 beads time. So 1, 2 green beads, and our next flower along is pink. And I'll pop that on, and that one definitely has to have a yellow centre. Some of them will have pink centres, but well, let's try it out. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, I think yellow in that one. We might put pink ones in the other blue flowers, I think. It's nice to mix it up a bit. So we've got our flower on and our centre bead. Back through the flower. and then forwards through the green bead behind. You can see that the pattern is starting to emerge. I'm going to work through the rest of my beads. I'm going to put a velvet bead, a crystal bead and a leaf in each gap. They're separated by either 2 or 3 seed beads on the main strand in the larger size, but I'm not going to follow the same order each time. In the next section I'm going to start probably with a pink crystal, then a leaf, then a velvet bead, and that's what gives you this extra bit of texture running through. When I've got all the way through to that one there, I'll be back to you to show you the next stage. So I've put on my centre front sequence, and I've got in each gap between the flowers a leaf, a velvet bead and a crystal, and they're not all in the same order, so sometimes the leaf comes first, sometimes it's the middle, sometimes it's at the end, and I've carried that through all the sequence. I haven't done it symmetrical about the centre front. That's my preference. You may want to, but I wanted it to be a little bit more naturalistic. So I've come all the way to the end, and now the original one has the velvet bead just threaded on, which I've already done, and then it's got one more crystal dangle. So I've got crystal dangle to go on. So it's back through the crystal bead to pull up the anchor, and then through the previous green bead on the main strand to point forwards. So I'm now at this position here. I've got 2 velvet beads and 3 crystal beads left to space out along towards my centre back. Now this is very dependent on what finished length you want, so I'm going to now thread on a relatively random sequence until I get to the centre back. However, I am going to be very aware that I'm going to pass the thread back through the main line of the centre front, and that is going to tighten it up a little bit and make it a tiny bit shorter, so don't be mean with this sequence here. I'm going to allow for this to tighten up by between 6mm to 10mm, so if you want it to be really precise, remember to take that into account. Right, I'm going to put on this sequence and I'll be back to you to show you how to do the first side of the clasp. I've put on my sequence up towards the centre back, and as I've done in the original, I've slowly faded out the green beads and put in more lemon and pink so that I bring those colours up into the back of the design. Now I'm going to start off by doing the button end of the clasp, which in this case we're going to use a flower bead. So I've got my flower bead to pop on, and I need an anchor bead for the middle. I'm going to use a yellow one as we've used before, and I'm going to go back through the first few beads of my main strand, and there's the button attached. Now I need to come back through all of these beads along the main strand to make sure that everything is nice and firmly together and it's not going to stretch or break. So it's just a reinforcing pass. So I can line up all the beads between my fingers and pass through them quite easily. Now I'm coming towards the back of the flowers and the dangles now, so I just need to be careful not to catch the thread around anything. And as I pull through, you can see that tightens that section up just a tiny bit. I'll do the same here. You can just about see the needle between the beads. When I pull through, that tightens it up, and that's why it shrinks just a little bit. Now you don't have to yank on the thread, just allow the needle to do its job. Just a gentle pull through of the thread, and that will bring everything together. I'm going to continue doing this until I get to the keeper bead that I left at the start of our design. And I've emerged at the keeper bead. Now I just need to do the same sequence here on this side. I'm going to take the keeper bead off for the moment so that I don't accidentally catch the knot itself with my needle, because that's very easy to do and then you can't take the keeper bead off. It's effectively sewn on. And now I can work out to the other side. So I've just got to copy that sequence up until the flower. When I've done that, I'll be back to show you how to do the loop. This is where the keeper bead was, and I have copied the sequence from the other side of the necklace up to the point where I joined on the flower, which is there. That's the flower button that we're going to use as one half of the mechanism. I've then continued on and I've added 24 size 10 seed beads. Now I've just done a random selection of the two colours because I need to make a loop that the flower will just fit through, and 24 beads seems just about right. Now that will complete our mechanism, but I'm running a little short on thread. So instead of reinforcing the loop with this thread, I'm going to bring the other thread ends from the keeper bead up to reinforce it. So for the moment, I'm just going to pass back through the last green bead of the sequence, bringing the 24 beads up into a loop. And there we go. So that will now connect to that. Now I've got my two keeper bead ends. Now remember I left between 30 and 40 centimetres. So I've got plenty of thread here to finish off and reinforce this side of the necklace. So I've already threaded both ends through a needle. Now if you can't get both ends through, I have lots of practice doing it, but if you can't manage it, one thread at a time will do. If you've only got one needle, you can cut this needle off that you've just been using right against there to leave the tails as long as possible, because we'll need those to finish off. But I have a spare needle, so I've used it to connect to the keeper bead thread ends, and I'm just going to pass up through everything I've just added on to make the side string. So having brought the keeper bead thread up to here, I've gone around the loop and come down here and finished off all the threads between the beads of this main strand. And that means that I have finished off my violet necklace. Now we just have to make the earrings. Earrings are so simple. Each earring is 2 flowers and a leaf, and the flowers need to be pre-prepared on head pins to make a loop at the back. So seed bead through the centre of your flower into trim and make a loop. Getting really tight. You've got a little loop at the back, so I've got one of each colour, and I've already put a 6mm jump ring on the leaf, and I've attached a 4mm jump ring to that 6mm jump ring. Now it's just a case of 2 pairs of pliers to open a second 4mm jump ring, and we put 1 flower on, then we put the 6mm jump ring on, sorry, the 4mm jump ring above the 6mm jump ring, then the other flower, and then the ear fitting. And with all that in place, get the other pair of pliers in and close. And there's your little earring to go with your brand new necklace. It's a really nice project to do, very relaxing and an absolute delight to wear, whether you do it with the bluey violet beads or with the lemon beads. I hope you'll give it a go. Thank you for joining me.